let's talk about Indiana here. Indiana. Now, they have Ohio State and Michigan both on there. I think a lot of this is going to depend on what Michigan is next season. If Michigan is a top 10, top 15 team, I think that Indiana has a pretty difficult schedule here. But if Michigan, is kind of what we saw last season with like maybe a fringe top 25, I shouldn't say fringe top 20. They were a fringe top 20 team. They were in the top 25, but not exactly, a super, high up top 25 team, then I think it could be more favorable. But then you get USC at Washington. That's going to be a road trip for them. But we also saw how the road trip went last year at Oregon. So I gotta be honest here, Zach. I'm not going to say it's a favorable schedule, but I'm also not going to say it's a challenging schedule. I'm somewhere right in the middle. Which way do you lean?
I lean favorable, and I know. I think
favorable compared to the rest of the Big Ten, right?
Yes,
we're not saying favorable.
Favorable compared. Yeah. Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Washington, regardless of where, is hard. But I feel like the pattern with Indiana is they kind of build momentum, and then they just start steamrolling people. And so, again, what do you see in the first 6 games? The ability to steamroll, right? You've got North Texas, which North Texas is actually a pretty decent group of 5 team. Like they were
lost their coach and stuff. So
so it's probably gonna be different.
But it is a program that invests more at the group of 5 level.
Yeah. And then I think it's Howard. That'll be fun. Infinity to nothing. And in Western Kentucky, it'll probably be a blowout. Northwestern, E. At Rutgers, E. At Nebraska, I think the last time they played it was 56-7, right? That was that game. Yeah,
that was. We don't just beat top 25 teams. We beat the out of them.
Stuff out of them. We did. I was gonna say, not that we swear on this show, but we should like invest in a bleep.
I gotta get that. I gotta get that clip, and we'll play it from time to time.
Yeah. Just make sure the bleep works. Anyway, so like you get rolling at 6-0, and that's when you get Ohio State at home in what is going to be, I think, going to be the biggest game in the Big Ten season, right?
That's a national championship, team versus defending or the last 2 national championship teams, and then probably. I would say the best game that Indiana played all season. I know you could argue that Penn State game as well with needing the game-winning drive and everything else, but I think the level of play that Ohio State had in that game. Sorry, Penn State fans, I'm not trying to dog you here. I just felt like Ohio State played better in that game overall than what we saw from Penn State for the entire game. They kind of came back in that one, but I think that was probably the best game of the season last year in the Big Ten, and to see it again, especially at Indiana, it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
So
I think it's certainly not favorable in the sense of like this is not Indiana's schedule 2 years ago. Like
no, and even that one looked more difficult going into the season. I always try to remind people of that. Like that one had the defending national champion, and the team that played him in the national championship on that schedule. It's just, both of those teams lost their coach and lost so many different players. A team that does have a more favorable schedule, and Evil Badger Ryan Willey pointed out here, it's Wisconsin. Now, he says here that Big Ten Ted has Wisconsin 13th, and a peek around the corner, a friend of the show, Greg Flugar, has Wisconsin at the bottom half of the conference. Wisconsin will make a bowl. Book it. I got to be honest, Zach. I think my hot take of Wisconsin being good, I should have waited a year, because I do think Wisconsin has a really good opportunity here. I like what they've done in the transfer portal. We talked about that a number of times here. I mean, the most difficult game you're looking at here is at Iowa, and then you get at Penn State, USC. Like those are all difficult teams, but those are not really national championship contender teams, at least so far. I think USC is going to be better next year, but I don't know if they're national championship contender just quite yet. We'll see. But I mean, for Wisconsin, seems like all the really tough teams they played last year, for the most part, they're not playing this year, and it's kind of done a 180 of being one of the most difficult schedules in all of college football to now. This might be the most favorable one in the Big Ten, if you ask me.
Well, it has to be. It has to be because the last 2 seasons, it's the reason why Luke Fickell still has his job, is because like most coaches, even regardless of how good you are, would have struggled with those schedules. Now, I would argue that Luke Fickell should have done more anyway, but
he did get 2 ranked wins in the season, though.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they're not ranked. They weren't ranked at the end of the season, but
SEC. I'm trying to do anything I can for Luke Fickell here. All right.
SEC bias. Yeah, and I'm not.
Don't you put that on me, Zack? Don't you put that SEC bias on?
No, not on you. Not on you. On AP, the AP voters.
Oh yes.
Yeah. AP voters. Okay. We're not going to rank Illinois because we love our Vanderbilts and Tennessees. Oh my gosh, get out of here with that crap. Anyway, so here's my. I think if Wisconsin is 2-3 at the bye, I think Fickell's fired.
2-3 at the bye.
So like
you really
they
think
have
they're
Notre
going to lose
Dame.
to Michigan State?
So here's the good thing. Their swing game is a game that they should win. But here's the problem. Who do you trust more, Pat Fitzgerald or Luke Fickell?
I mean, have you seen Michigan State's roster?
Have you seen Pat Fitzgerald teams with Northwestern talent?
I have, man. I have, and I'm with you, Pat Fitzgerald, but I just don't know if it's going to pop off year one, Like
I'm not saying that either. I'm just I'm not predicting this. I'm just saying I am curious about that Michigan State game because if Wisconsin's 2-2 going into that game, and then they have to come back home from Penn State and then beat a fired up Michigan State team. I don't know. I just think that's now it could be moot. Imagine they upset Notre Dame week 1. Like then it's like, okay, off to the races, who cares?
I am putting all my eggs in the Wisconsin basket if that happens.
Yeah,
Wisconsin 12-0.
Yeah. Actually, probably more likely is they get the upset on the road at Happy Valley. But if they win one of those 2 games, like forget anything I'm saying.
I do think they have a chance against Penn State. Look, I'm not a Penn State hater by any means. I like Penn State. Don't get me wrong, but I think this is going to be an interesting game. I think you're probably going to see Wisconsin going in 2-1 there, and you're going to see a Penn State team that hasn't been tested yet. I mean, your toughest game is at Temple going into that. Wisconsin will have been tested against Notre Dame at that point. Maybe Penn State. Yes, it'll be at Penn State and all this stuff, but I'm not ready to write off Penn State and Michigan State as losses for Wisconsin yet. If they are 2-3, maybe Luke Fickell, they move on from him. We'll see, but I think this Wisconsin team can finish top half of the Big Ten. I think they can be a 6-6, 7-5 team next year, maybe even better if all the talent lands and they don't have a bunch of injury issues.
Yeah.
So
I think to that point, if they stay healthy, I think they should go 4-0 in their last 4 games, including Minnesota's the iffiest one there, but I think at home they should be able to beat Minnesota, and I think home Rutgers at home, at Maryland, at Purdue, like I think they can. Those are 4 wins, I think.
Mm-hmm. Ryan Willey says, sorry, Dabney, what got you? Sorry. 7-5 is what Ryan Willey says. I think that's a responsible prediction there.
Yeah.
Dabney asked, how do we know if it's home or away? At the bottom, it shows, and I think the super chat was covering it when you asked this, the white ones are home for that team. Gray ones are away. And then like the dark gray is the neutral site there. And I think that's just Notre Dame. And if you look closely, they do have like Friday ones put on there, like Nebraska, Iowa is Friday. I'm sure they'll actually have more Friday ones planned out later on, but at least that's what they have for now there. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Says the legend was blocked. Okay. All right, Zach. So I pointed out my one that I saw that was kind of the most favorable to me in Wisconsin. What's another one that you see that is pretty favorable in the Big Ten?
So I think UCLA's schedule is fairly favorable.
I would agree. Yeah.
Like at Cal, like, so obviously,
And that's not a bad road trip, And
Yeah.
Taj Lupoy is a first-time head coach. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, San Diego State, Purdue, at Maryland, like you're looking at a possible 4-0 start for Bob Chesney.
Yeah.
At Oregon hurts, but then 3 straight home games: Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nevada. Like, Wisconsin's probably the hardest out of those 3, but like I think with the talent infusion they've gotten, like I think they can win all 3 of those.
Mhm.
Like UCLA at the very least should be able to get to a bowl game with this schedule.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm already seeing wins on there. San Diego State should be a win. Purdue should be a win. Sorry, UCLA fans, I'm not trying to disparage you. Or Purdue fans, I'm not trying to disparage you. Maryland has a good shot to be a win. We'll see what happens with that road trip. But then Wisconsin, Michigan State, both traveling far in that one, could be difficult. Nevada, I mean, that's probably a good 4 or 5 wins right there. Really, all you need is 1 or 2 more to get to 6-6, 7-5.
Yeah. Illinois has to travel to them. That's a swing game. And listen,
sure.
it might sound crazy, but Oregon has a bye before UCLA, but so does UCLA. I think the bye helps UCLA more than Oregon, because I think Oregon is going to be like, it's UCLA. Whereas I think like Oregon's the toughest game on their schedule. And like UCLA, I think you can really really amp that game up and say, hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's go.
Great point by Max is the UCLA Maryland game in September or October. Let's see. That would be
September. September 26th, I think.
So watch out, UCLA. Going to be tough one playing Mike Locksley there in September. Should have had the bye week moved up 1. You would have been much better off there.
Yeah.
All right, I got 2 more, Zach. I'll start with Penn State. Favorable schedule here for them. They have to go at Michigan, and I think that's going to be one that could kind of decide if maybe one of those 2 teams is a playoff team. I think you're going to see both of those teams kind of fighting for that. And then you got USC on there, but they're at home. But you get them at home. You do have to travel out to Washington. Those are all going to be top 20 teams in the preseason. I think, we'll see if they're still top 20 at that time, but those are all going to be top 20 teams. So it's not an easy schedule by any means, but it is probably the most favorable, if not the second most favorable in the Big Ten, I would say. Yeah.
And I will say too, like that at Washington, like being at Washington, that's bracketed by home games against Purdue and Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So I think that really helps.
I agree. Can you take a guess at who my other one was?
Can I take a guess? Oh man. Is it Maryland?
No. Well, Maryland, I do have Maryland as a little bit of an easier one, but they weren't the one I was going to name. So I think Maryland could be in there. But Illinois, I think, is one that is a little bit more favorable.
Yeah, I can see that.
They have Oregon, but Oregon is at home. Yes, they travel to Ohio State, but you got Duke at home. You get Oregon coming across the country almost to you. You're going to go to Maryland. Some of these road games are some of the ones you would like to go on the road for. I think if there was a team that you would like to go to the West Coast to face on the road, UCLA is probably the one. No disrespect to UCLA fans, but I think that's probably the one that you'd want to travel on the road the most to go play. So I wouldn't say it's a most favorable schedule in the Big Ten by any means, but I do see aspects of this schedule that could be good for Illinois, especially coming off a season where they lost a lot of talent.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think I was a little I didn't know what to make of Illinois, but I think it's more because of the teams that are on the schedule, not necessarily how they're organized. But I think I agree with you. Like Ohio State and Oregon are the two toughest games, but getting Iowa at home, Oregon at home. Yeah, like it's a very doable schedule. Like I think you could see like 9-3, 8-4, 9-3, maybe as a floor for Illinois.
Mm-hmm. All right, rapid fire really fast just to make sure we've touched on all the teams here. Let's see. Maryland, we said they're favorable, right?
Well, it's favorable until you realize that Mike Loxley's the coach.
Well, it's favorable in September. Once you get out of September.
Yeah.
They do have to go at UConn. I'm not saying UConn's a great team or anything like that. And then you also got James Franklin there.
Yeah.
So the out of conference, I think, could make it a little bit more difficult than maybe some people think.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I had not made the connection that they're facing James Franklin. I might flip my thought. I'm not sure September is going to be it. They've got Howard. Yeah. And they get UCLA at home. They get Virginia Tech at home. At UConn, I think Jim Mora, who is the coach there, he's gone, or I think he left, but UConn was pretty good last year.
I think Nebraska actually had a difficult one, and we didn't give them credit for that. Nebraska's pretty challenging.
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for Nebraska fans.
Yeah, you're going to go at Michigan State. That's going to be their first Big Ten game. At Oregon.
Oof.
At Iowa. At Illinois.
Oof.
Yeah.
At Rutgers is, I know people will laugh at this, but like, I'm not sure Nebraska roster wise. Like, I don't love that trip to Jersey.
Well, and Rutgers could be playing for Greg Schiano's, maybe not his job at that point, but some public perception for him at that point. Yeah. I talked to Mike Broadbent about that. You guys can check out the Rutgers transfer portal recap where we talk about Greg Schiano tomorrow morning. That'll be out. I think I have it scheduled for 9 a.m. But they have an interesting situation with no defensive coordinator right now too. I think they're on day 55. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, day 55 of no defensive coordinator. So almost 2 months of no defensive coordinator hired for Rutgers.
That's crazy. Are they just waiting for the right guy, or just does nobody want it?
It sounds like they just keep striking out from what Mike said. Yeah, you can listen to the episode tomorrow, but it sounds like from what Mike said, they just keep striking out. They were gonna go after Ola Adams, the secondary coach for Indiana. But it looks like he may have turned them down. So,
oh man,
yeah. So, Minnesota favorable, not favorable.
That at Washington, Michigan combo, and then the Iowa at Indiana combo is Penn pretty State, painful.
It could be pretty tough too. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a hard time knowing what to expect from Minnesota because on one hand, I really do like the quarterback. I think PJ Fleck continues. Like, I have not always been a PJ Fleck guy, but he continues to grow on me. Like, he does less with more. Like, last year's team had no business being 8-5, but they were. And that's a credit to him, a credit to his coaching staff. But, man, that's, if Minnesota goes 6-6 with this schedule, I think that might be success.
Looking forward to see what the over/under is on FanDuel because I'm just going to predict them to be one game over their win total.
Yeah,
that's what they seem to do they always go over their win total. So if FanDuel sets them at 5.5, I'm gonna have them at 6-6. So, I think we've touched on all of them. If there's anything we did not touch on, I apologize. I would say that the most difficult one to me is probably Northwestern. The least difficult one to me is probably either Wisconsin or Penn State, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead.
Penn
Go
State.
ahead.
Max says, what do people think the chances are Penn State goes 12-0? I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but I do think it could happen. You mentioned it earlier. I think some of it really depends on how good Michigan is. And like Washington, there's a real question. Josh Pate had mentioned this, and I think you've mentioned this too. Like, what are the vibes at Washington going to be like? Because we're all kind of assuming, well, Washington's really hard to beat at home. But man, that whole Damon Williams situation, like Jed Fish is going to have to do some real culture building over the offseason, because that thing could derail, like, and have bigger impact than maybe people are giving it credit for. I would if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd probably put it at like 5%, just because I don't like, we don't know what to expect out of Wisconsin. We don't know what to expect out of Michigan. We don't know what to expect out of Washington, and USC's at home. So it's certainly possible, but also I think you can make the argument we really don't know what to expect out of Matt Campbell, Penn State, year one. And yes, you have Rocco Becht, but he's in a new school, new culture. Yes, you have some other Iowa State guys, but they're playing in the Big Ten now. And like, particularly at Michigan and Wisconsin, like, I just have questions about, are those Iowa State guys going to be able to handle the bump up in competition? So I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I think
the possibility of Penn State going 12-0 is there. I just don't think it's very likely. I would put it at maybe like a 10 or 15% chance. So it's possible. Like, I could see it happening. Just don't think it's all that likely to happen. But boy, what a story that would be if it did happen.
Yeah.
So